Bella Roma. The Irish College is a beautiful building. It sits at the intersection of two streets and is a short walk from some of the main tourist sites in Rome. The university is near the Trevi Fountain, and I walked past the Colosseum, the Forum and the Victor Emmanuel Monument each day on the way to lectures. It was the most beautiful walk of my life. I adored it. Our first meal in the Irish College was awkward. Some of the priests' academic profiles meant they were not always the best communicators. Small talk was limited, and we largely ate in silence. We were offered wine. Although I have no interest in alcohol, I felt the cliche that when in Rome, do as the Romans do. It was ironic, as I was the only one that said yes. I was very sorry that my open heart had walked me into a conspicuous space and probably sounded a few alarm bells, having just arrived into this new life. While I drank very little alcohol for the rest of the year, most, if not all, of the Irish students took refuge in large amounts of alcohol, probably to help them to cope with the crushing loneliness that was part of life in this most cosmopolitan of capital cities. I was used to being alone, but I felt it in new ways now, and I was very curious about what lay ahead. We started 3 hours of Italian lessons the next day, which would run for 3 weeks. I really liked the teacher, and the earlier course in Dublin helped the material to settle, and I made a lot of progress in a short time. I've since discovered that learning the same thing from a variety of angles in different ways can accelerate the learning process. The teacher told us a little joke in Italian. Few words as he described the entrance test to join one of the Italian police forces that were always known for their elegant uniforms, as Italian life is the embodiment of beauty. The prospective candidates were taught the words for their left, sinistra, and right, destra, hands. The invigilator then waved his hands around. If the candidates could still distinguish their left and right hands, then they were deemed suitable to join the training program, which would lead to their emergence in spotless uniforms and a variety of equipment, including a device which resembled a large lollipop, which was deployed with vigour by those in police cars as they sped through the Roman streets. It was shared with warmth and kindness, but many of my Irish colleagues did not appreciate it. Soon they reported how they found an Irish bar in Rome, just as many Irish tourists leave Ireland and go in search of Irish bars wherever they go, so all remains like it was before they left home, albeit with better weather. I never understood this mentality and struggled when it became clear that the Irish in the Irish College, not all, but many of them, viewed everyone else, especially the Italians, as the foreigners. September may be one of the nicest months to visit Rome. Many Irish couples chose to get married in Rome during those years. Some probably liked the romance of Rome, and others definitely wanted to avoid the hassle, the social pressures and the expense of an Irish wedding. Many newly married Italian couples walked the Roman streets and had their photos taken near historic monuments and in gorgeous parks like the Villa Borghese. They were so beautiful that I imagined we were part of an Italian film, living la dolce vita, because the Italians really know how to live life. They're never drunk, they're always so well dressed and positive. They could wear black plastic bags and look amazing. That was only the men. The women were at a different level, and their silk black hair and deep brown eyes, windows to their mysterious souls, had a big impact on me. I looked from a distance, but thought they were descended from heaven. People with clear skin and smiles that were beyond anything an Irish person could offer or want to offer. The Italians seemed to have deep reservoirs of joy in their hearts, and it was addictive. I did have a deeper experience of the Irish wedding. One older couple arrived alone and were unhappy at the rejection they'd experienced from the no longer loving family, who resented the decision to go abroad. I think they had a miserable experience, as they really felt the pain of their isolation. The couples arrived on Sunday, did the paperwork in the Irish College, and had their wedding the next day. Relations of mine arrived one Sunday in February, and the bride was adamant that she wanted to get married on a different day, as it was the anniversary of their first meeting. I was asked to tell the director about the change of plans. He could not comprehend the sentimental nonsense as he described it, and saw no reason to change the date. Not for the first or last time in my life I was part of a psychic drama where I had no stake, but I was the one that would feel some impact when I was delegated to mediate and conduct the negotiations. The bride won, and the wedding took place on her preferred day. I booked a very nice restaurant, and it had a wonderful reputation in a city and country where food is a key element of the national identity. I became a vegetarian in recent years, but at that time I was fond of the variety of meats that were available in restaurants. I recommended the Parma ham to the groom and thought it would be a nice introduction to Italian cuisine. He took one bite, struggled, removed it from his mouth, sent it back, and asked me why the Italians didn't cook the rashers properly. This seemed to me to be another moment where I was moving away from my Irish heritage and beginning to uncover another way of living, one that wasn't clear yet. I was getting some level of clarity in what I didn't like, and it was a little destabilising, but felt like it was meant to be. I spent a little more time with my relations during their week in Rome. We visited a church called the Chiesa delle Osse, the Church of the Bones. It might have been a strange choice for me to bring a couple starting out a married life to a church filled with the skeletons of 3,700 people. I think it was part of my small mission to help anyone I met to appreciate that life is extremely short. We walked into the church and saw skeletons standing and sitting, dressed as they were in life. We moved silently along a small line and get to the end to read each dead person's shared thought written in many languages. We were as you are, and as we are, so you shall be. The couples were largely silent, and perhaps that was the correct meditative response to one of life's deepest mysteries. Why are we here? What are we supposed to do while we are here? And where do we go when we're not here? And will anyone remember us? And why do we suffer? And will technology help us, or a version of us, to live forever? I had dedicated my life to one religious and theological framework, the Catholic faith that I was born into, which claimed to offer the answer to these questions. It was a happy coincidence for my salvation that the one true faith was the majority faith in the country where I was reared. I was never sure how that could work for the other great faiths in other countries, as they also preach that their creed is the gate to eternal life. In the Catholic theological story, life on earth had limited value, as our main task was to have faith in Jesus Christ, to live a good moral life such that the fruits of our lives would be evidence that we were doing our best to secure our eternal home in heaven with the Blessed Trinity. St. Augustine's famous book, Confessions, included the line, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it rests in you." And this made perfect sense. The idea that our hearts could only achieve some peace if we had a deep relationship with God seemed rational to me. But we are finite beings existing in limited time and space, seeking connection with an infinite eternal being. St. Aquinas' proofs for the existence of God seem beyond my comprehension. God, the unmoved mover, must always have existed, or he would not be God. God must know all, or he would not be God. If so, I think, why does he or she, or whatever it is, stop wars and suffering? The stock answer is that God gave humanity the dignity of free will, and we have a choice to accept or reject his love. Contemporary theology suggests that God does not send us to heaven, rather we choose it for ourselves based on the choices we make in life. I could accept the wisdom of Lord Acton's phrase that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It was men that secured political power from the dawn of time, and their corrupt practices brought much suffering to the ordinary people. That still did not explain a cot death or a young child with parents that adored him or her getting cancer and dying. I was still praying diligently to this unseen force called God and was doing my best to nurture my faith, as I was certain I could be that I was in the right place, and in my innocence believed I was destined to do great things. That was before Mike Tyson, born a couple of weeks before me, taught us that everyone has a plan until they get a punch in the mouth. More punches would come later, but for now life was sweet, interesting people, beautiful places to visit, new languages to learn, getting ready for a new university term in a famous building, and the warm Roman sun as September moved towards October. We were largely free in the afternoons to explore, but there was a rigour in the Irish College in Rome that was completely absent from my previous seminary experience. I had been out of the building for 3 of my 4 years in university and the hospitals, and was used to feeling a high level of independence. Now timekeeping really mattered, and it took a while to adjust to the new regime. It is a strong North of Ireland influence, and the Northerners found it more relaxing in Rome than what they'd been used to before their arrival. Like everything in Ulster, life was lived through the nationalist and unionist prisms, through the reflected light from history, and identity was at the heart of all aspects of daily life. Being a member of a GAA club, having a particular surname or accent, the schools attended, and a lot more all clarified a person's origins, and maybe a very disciplined approach was necessary for survival. I liked the Northerners and found their black humour quite addictive. Once when I was due to serve Mass for Cardinal O'Fee during one of his visits, one of our northern brethren warned me to anticipate the beauty of his version of the Our Father prayer. He began with a particularly guttural version, and half sang and half roared his way at speed, while the congregation tried to keep up, and I tried to avoid passing out from the intense effort required to prevent a loud roar of laughter. The earlier warning taught me a lot about sowing a seed, and the comic power of the subsequent payoff. Later in the year, Archbishop Paul Marcinkus visited to say a Mass and confer a ministry on those in a particular year. We were called to a ministry called Lector, and it's another stage on the way to ordination. We knew little about him other than he was from Chicago, had a measure of fame as the Pope's bodyguard, and a bigger measure as a person associated with the Vatican bank scandal, when an Italian banker, Roberto Calvi, was found hanging from Blackfriars Bridge in London in June 1982. He was later accused of being involved in the death of Pope John Paul I. To say he was big could not begin to do justice to his physical presence. His voice boomed and he made Cardinal O'Fee appear to be a wallflower. He took the opportunity to say how happy he was to visit the Irish College, as the Irish were some of the few people that didn't turn their backs on him during his time of need. The Irish like an underdog, so of course the door would be open to him. We are selective in who we support, as Charles Stewart Parnell and Michael Collins, among others, discovered many years before, and eaten bread will typically be forgotten at warp speed if the norms dictate that someone is to be cast out, all that he or she has done eviscerated and annihilated. The Archbishop also announced that the Catholic Church needs men, real men, and you know what I mean. He glared out at us, and for one brief moment I remembered my own guardian angel, the man with the steel plate in his head that always showed such care for me. It was clear that the Archbishop was commenting on the Church's very uneasy relationship with homosexuality, particularly among those putting themselves forward for ordination. It was easy to view him in a different life as a mafia don. There were a few titters from the more effeminate students, and this reinforced my growing sense that celibacy was an optional extra for many within the student and priestly population. A priest told me as I was leaving for Rome, "If you do not bring God with you to Rome, you will not find him there." Afterwards, as we stood for photographs with the Archbishop 2 steps above him on the altar, he was still taller than us. He was very endearing, and I liked him, even though he was terrifying. Many years later, he was named as a practicing homosexual by Frederick Martel in his book called In the Closet of the Vatican Power, Homosexuality and Hypocrisy, which was published in 2019. I always thought people are more than their sexuality and firmly believe in the idea of live and let live. I struggled for a time with marriage breakdown involving people where young children are involved, and then eventually fully appreciated it is not my place to judge anyone. It's reasonable to form a view as to whether someone is likeable or not, and whether it'd be good to spend time with them. But the darkest reaches of their psyche is their business alone, as long as the resulting behaviour is not criminal, and this approach has served me well over the years. I tried to adapt to Roman life, but my efforts to take a siesta in the afternoon were doomed, as I had then and continue to have now an inability to sleep for long and exceptional energy levels and good health. My encounters with death, from meditating on my own decomposition with the spiritual director when I was 18, through my experience in the hospitals, had deepened my awareness that someday I will sleep and not wake up, so I tried to live as fully possible in the current moment. After a few short weeks, the students divided into 2 groups. Some would attend the Angelicum University, and the lectures there would be through English. It was considered to be more conservative and therefore more trustworthy during an era when the Church was led by Pope John Paul II, a man who witnessed so much under communist rule in Poland and who used his influence to bring about the end of that particular political creed in many European countries. The students from a religious order called the Legionnaires of Christ attended this university in full clerical regalia every day. They looked very smart and impressive, walking 2 by 2 through the narrow Roman streets, just as the early Christians did when they went out preaching the gospel. The order had been founded by a Mexican priest, Marcial in 1941, and he was held in high regard by the Roman hierarchy until 2019, when a report claimed that he was guilty of committing serial sexual abuse against many people, including young children. This was after original allegations had been made in 1997 and treated with the customary urgency when the Church was faced with allegations. I've often wondered if life is a setup, if we are participants in some simulacrum, a matrix that we glimpse when we experience déjà vu, the dislocation we feel when we sense that we've been here before, that this moment is not the first time we've experienced the same sensations and thoughts. This might explain the random manner in which most of us are conceived, the lottery of genes, parents, life experience, the need to make a living but ideally not greedy, the capacity to show kindness when others are cruel while using us in a variety of ways to meet their perceived needs, the requirement for discipline even as we experience the deep elemental power of our sexuality when its drum begins to beat. We are designed to reproduce, to find someone that will connect with us if that is the shared choice, and be vulnerable, open ourselves, so we experience the transcendence that is part of sexual ecstasy. As the body never forgets, we tend to want more. My mother's version of this was characteristically negative when commenting with disdain about men. The older they get, the worse they get. Always a positive vision, failing to recognise that these intense forces enable the human race to sustain itself. Doubtless if men gave birth, the world would not be overpopulated, but people die and people come into the world largely as a result of a man and woman copulating. It was ever thus and probably will continue to be, even with the advances in technology today, which gives people more technological options to bring children into the world.